pleased at where we are. It's lean, it's disciplined, it's focused on the health and well-being of the American people. It is a way to open up our economy based on science, a real path with a plan, a vision, goals, timetable, milestones, benchmarks to get the job done.
May 20th, 2020. Joe here at the Wake Up Channel. I appreciate everybody for joining me today. Hope everyone is doing well out there. If you're still under quarantine, if you're still under house arrest, maybe you're in an area where they do have things that are opening up slowly, right? Maybe you're still in an area where everything's locked down. Fortunately, I'm in an area where most everything is open for the most part. Nothing really ever closed besides some obvious things. But, today is, it's a good day, but it's also very rainy. I'm actually in Virginia, so it's raining a lot. It's going to be raining over the next few weeks. It looks like at least the next week and a half. So I'm not very keen on that. I'm not very excited about that. But first, some sad news. Rafi Zacharias actually died yesterday. He announced 2 months ago, if you remember, that he had a form of spinal cancer that he was unable, apparently, to fight off. The doctors had kind of listed it as a lost cause. That is very unfortunate. I am a big proponent of marijuana and cannabis. I really hope that he would have taken some of that. There's a lot of really good therapies out there. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Maybe it was just a hopeless case. I'm under the impression or opinion that there are no such thing as hopeless cases. I have seen so many people come back from the brink of death when it comes to cancer and other types of serious illnesses with the help of natural herbs and other types of holistic healings, Chinese medicine, and so forth. We've also seen that in this recent coronavirus where a lot of people have been using Chinese medicine and they have been surviving and thriving. And that's one thing that they don't really want to talk about in the mainstream media, because that's something that we just can't have. We can't have herbal medicine. We can't have the natural stuff. We can't have things that actually work well with our bodies, that actually are from nature. In fact, most of pharmaceuticals, as you know, started from nature, and then they kind of splintered from there to where they can basically patent certain things that don't occur naturally in our environment. So that's the way they can patent stuff. If it doesn't occur naturally in an environment, therefore they can patent things and make money off of it. That's why there's such a big thing over this anti-malaria drug. Now, I'm not saying hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine actually, occurs naturally, but quinine is from a bark, and it has been seeing a lot of good results as well for the coronavirus. But we do live in an age in a media that is highly censored right now. We do live in the United States of Russia and the United States of communism, actually, right now, as far as the media goes, as far as our freedom of speech goes. We cannot talk about things that are dissenting opinions. We cannot talk about things that have basis in fact from medical doctors and people who have actually done the research. Unlike this actual virus that we're dealing with right now, and the virologists and epidemiologists that are working with this virus says they have not been able to isolate this virus. So how can they test this virus if they can't isolate it? That's one of the big questions of the day. We're going to be talking about that. I'm kind of fired up because there's always something going on that just raises my blood pressure. I'm trying to keep it under control. I'm trying to keep my blood pressure under control. I try not to get upset about too many things because I want to be around for quite a long time, because this is an interesting time to be alive. It's a very frustrating time to be alive. It's a lot of great movies. You got to stay alive until Avengers 5 and 6 and 7 comes out, obviously. If that's the only reason to stay alive, then I would recommend staying in your basement, staying on your computer, making your dank Trump memes, and all that type of stuff. So moving on from some sad news, this is also some sad news. Everything I talk about is sad. Unfortunately, we do have the Constitution, and we are still under republic as it stands right now. Of course, that's constantly being threatened. So we have to stay vigilant when it comes to that.
Very pleased.
Sorry about that. So yeah, if you know this is something that is not edited, I do this live stream, so sometimes there are, there's screw ups and stuff like that. So just deal with it. So let me go to the main screen here, and we will get into some of the main topics of the day, which includes mail-in ballots, nationwide mail-in ballots. Now, please understand, we do have absentee ballots. We've had that for a long time in this country for people who are sick or disabled. They can't get to the election polls for one reason or the other, or if they're just not in their district or they're on vacation or something like that. I think that you would, if you're a true American patriot, you would make time to actually get to the ballot. Now, I understand some people they simply can't do it for physical reasons, and that's completely understandable. You should be able to get an absentee ballot and send it in. But now everything is changing over the past few months. A lot of these states that are the toss-up states like Nevada, and Wisconsin and Michigan and all these other states that were highly contested. Pennsylvania is a big one too. So they have these statewide initiatives to have a mail-in ballot policy. A lot of these states want this type of thing. In fact, it was included in that monolith of a bill that Nancy Pelosi was trying to pass. In fact, her most recent press conference that I just played earlier, that's what it was all about. I couldn't catch the whole thing because it was live. But what she was really talking about was, fighting for this like it was some sort of American dream that she was trying to get past. And what a lot of people don't understand, and of course it's become a meme now with, of course, this, not so much a meme, but it's kind of a quotable where it's this is just a wish list of the Democrat Party. This was not a bipartisan bill. It never will be a bipartisan bill. It will be hacked up in the Senate and will probably have to be rewritten. Whether that happens or not, now there was just a bill that was just passed here today that was just signed by Trump, that will be extending unemployment benefits and more stuff will be going towards people who need it, small businesses. The USDA is the farmers are actually going to be getting more money as well, which is also a good thing. But we're spending money hand over fist right now, and it's just like, who cares at this point, right? Most of the financial advisors, I guess, economic advisors to Trump are just basically saying, hey, you know what? We just have to keep spending money, and it's going to hurt in the short term and long term, if not for the next decade. We have a lot of stuff coming down the pipelines that we're just not prepared for. We have a lot of the unintended consequences that are just now starting to rear its head. A lot of people are still out of work. They're continuing to lose their jobs. This isn't going to turn around anytime soon. As much as Trump really wants it to happen, it's really out of his hands. There's not as much that he can do right now. And that is one of the biggest misperceptions that the Democrats are trying to forward into the minds of the people out there that are watching on the mass media and stuff like that. That Trump can, if he really wanted to turn this around, he could do something different. Well, what else can he possibly do at this point? I mean, he's spending the money, he's signing the bills, he's doing what has to be done. In fact, he has basically threatened to overrule the state governments who have decided to continue this lockdown to hasten or speed up the process of reopening everything. There's a lot of dissenting opinion about that because obviously the liberal media will want you to believe that the curve is nowhere near flattened. So let's get into the mail-in ballot policy. I know I'm kind of long-winded right now, but this is very important. There's a lot of people that out there that have heard about this over the past few months. They may not understand why this is such a big deal. Yeah, okay, well, we have a coronavirus. We have people dying left and right. So why should we force people to go into polling booths and subject themselves to the horrible pandemic, the plague, as it were, just to vote? Well, that's also a misconception because it's not a plague. It's barely even a pandemic, and we'll get into that, why that is in a few moments. But this mail-in ballot policy is a terrible, terrible idea simply because it's very ripe with fraud. If you've looked back in history, there's been plenty of instances where there's been fraud, and more recently probably there's a lot of state elections. I don't have them all in front of me, but I have been looking into some of them. But over history, there have been plenty of instances of state run fraud, also gubernatorial races and so forth, where there have been people have actually gone to jail because of it and lost their positions and all this other kind of stuff. And, it's rarely harped upon when we talk about mail-in ballot policy, but this is a huge problem. If that's the only reason, then that's simply enough to make it not a good idea. But it's also a problem because when Nancy Pelosi wants to give the Postal Service billions and billions of more dollars, this is why she wants to give them more money so she could streamline everything and make sure everything goes as planned, right? I guess whatever her agenda is, or the Democrats' agenda is right now, maybe it's Plan B to kind of not so much mess with the elections, but make it even more chaotic. And that's exactly what it would cause. It would cause pure chaos. I mean, look at the primaries that we just had, Democratic primaries. I believe the first one in Iowa. How did that go? That was terrible. It was complete chaos. They tried to use some sort of online application, and just didn't work. It wasn't tested properly. And for some reason, this nationwide state-in ballot, mail-in ballot policy is going to work. Absolutely not. And it's going to be rife with fraud because you got to understand that all these ballots are going to be going out to people that have probably already died too. So we're going to have more dead people voting in 2020. In fact, we're going to have a lot if they have their way, and we do have a mail-in ballot policy. This is just simply not a good idea. And we have absentee ballots already. We don't need this. And we're also talking about 5.5, 6 months from now when we have this election. For some reason, they had this belief that we're going to be on lockdown until then. So on November, when is the election? November 3rd, I guess. So November 4th, the pandemic's going to just end at that point, right? I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of, is that for some reason, if Biden actually pulls it off and wins, then the pandemic will just magically end. It'll end either way. But November 4th, November 3rd and 4th are going to be very interesting days coming up. So if you believe in the ballot policy and the mail-in ballot policy, leave me a note below. Tell me what you think about it. If you have a rational reason besides this coronavirus, because here's the thing. There's all kinds of businesses that are opening right now. How many businesses do you think is going to be open by November? Probably all of them if this continues going the way that it's going right now. We'll continue to have more businesses opening, and by November, everything will be open. Of course, we'll be in the midst of a depression. Absolutely. And that could hurt Trump as well. Because Trump is basically promising that we will have a V-like recovery, and that's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen. Too much damage is already done. And the damage was already done before this pandemic even happened. So once we do reach November, whether the actual depression, which I believe is going to happen, actually hits at that point, is going to basically decide this election. If the depression and the ensuing stock market collapse and the collapse of the dollar and all that kind of stuff, because it's coming. If that doesn't happen before November, Trump has a good shot. If it does, then he probably won't get elected. Because there's simply too many people now. I know that there's a lot of diehard Trump supporters out there. But if we actually go into a full-blown depression, I don't know. He might still be reelected. People might look at this and say, you know what, this is all contrived, this is all set up, it was all Democratic hoax and stuff like that. Yes, the virus is real, but the response to the virus, and especially from these Democratic-controlled states, especially are the ones in New York and California, they have really flubbed everything up. Trump only has so much power. He can't. He doesn't have the power to do everything. He can't. He can tell a governor what to do, but the governor doesn't have to. He can send the National Guard and all that kind of stuff, but he's not going to do that. He's not going to go down that road to force these governors to open everything up sooner than what they want to do. Now, are they all talking with each other? Is this something all part of a big agenda? We could go down that conspiracy road, and there's a lot of legitimacy to that. But we're not going to go down that road. I think I already went down it enough. This was from KUTV. This is going along the lines of down back the lines of the coronavirus and all the doctors that are being censored online. We've all seen them. We all know them. There's those two doctors that would really started with them that got online and was talking about how this whole lockdown was just messing everything up and was going to make it worse, and it's going to make it worse. Once everything does reopen finally, after this lockdown does finally end, a lot of the people with their immune systems are just not going to be able to handle it. And I'm not even talking about the coronavirus, because there's all kinds of families of coronaviruses out there that are still rampant. And the people that are in a lot of these areas that are high pollution areas, and we're going to get into that as well, the high pollution environmental factors that are causing a lot of these problems to have respiratory issues, they're going to have even more problems when everything starts to open up, which it is already starting to open up. Now, the media and, is trying to make the case that there's spikes and stuff like that. Now, that might have happened before. That could have, very well happened, and it would have to happen before all these things were opening up. So it was going to happen either way. And if you look at a lot of the graphs, things go up and they go down based on testing and all that kind of thing. It's not an exact science, but they are pretending that it is an exact science, and they are throwing down their edicts based on their opinions of what's going on. And there's not any real research going on in the coronavirus period. They haven't even been able to isolate this virus, let alone be accurately testing for it. This was from the New York Times. This is from May 6th. Don't be fooled by America's flattening curve. The media is really trying to convince us that this isn't ever going to be going away, that we're just going to have to live with it. We're going to have to wear our masks forever. And we already have proof now the masks are killing people because of carbon dioxide poisoning and other types of, just breathing in your own muck and pollution, especially for people that live in high pollution areas as well. It's just making it worse because a lot of those particles are getting stuck inside the mask. You're not able to filter it out, and then you're breathing it back in over and over and over again, and you're ending up back in the hospital with more respiratory illnesses. So it's feeding itself. It's a loop that's feeding itself over and over and over again. This is from Time. The U.S. flattened the curve. Time disagrees. This is from May 18th. This was from 2 days ago. They have flattened the curve. Next up is squashing it. And that's not going well. There's a lot of other media companies that are saying that, if we can flatten the curve for coronavirus, we can flatten the curve for climate change. Well, we haven't really decided yet on what the real cause of climate change really is. It's not. There's not 100% consensus that it's 100% man-made. And this is not going to be a talk on climate change or anything like that, but I figured I would say something because Greta Thunberg has been on CNN a few times. And we all know that Greta Thunberg is an expert on everything. She can barely even read the pre-prepared notes that are in front of her half the time. And you can't even understand a word she's saying. She just kind of rambles on. She kind of sounds like Joe Biden a little bit. She doesn't, I don't know why CNN has her on. I think that she, kind of burned a lot of her bridges, and she needs to just go back to school, and, she can do whatever she wants to do. But, she is not an expert on coronavirus. She's not a scientist. She's not an epidemiologist or anything like that. So CNN needs to find some better people. They need to actually have some of these doctors that have been talking about why this lockdown has been so disastrous for this country, not only for an economic, but also a sociological point of view, where, we have a huge uptick in suicides, a huge uptick in violence that's going on right now that we're just simply not talking about. This is from the CDC. This is a chart here. This is kind of interesting. We're talking about flattening the curve, right? Well, we're not really talking about the whole country. We're talking about New York, New Jersey, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Michigan, D.C., Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Maryland. We're not talking about any other places, right? But look at all these other, some of these semi epicenters, they're starting to flatten as well. The only one that's really going up is New York. Why is that? It's because of all the draconian laws that are going on in New York City. They want to keep everything locked down. They want to smash your head in. They're literally smashing people's heads in that disagree with their draconian, their type of 1984 edicts that are coming down from upon high, that are keeping everything under wraps and under control. They want to control the population. They want to control what you're thinking. They want to know where you're going. Now, am I a conspiracy theorist? No, I am not. I look at the facts. I look at how things are going. Not only that, but people in the areas that are in question, what they're saying as well. Because they're seeing things from their own perspective, with their own two eyes. And a lot of people saying that this is completely draconian. You have a lot of Democrats that are saying, this is not right. You have droves and droves of people that are leaving California because, it's not only their huge, the tax rates that they have in California, but we have businesses like Elon Musk's business, Tesla. He's probably going to be leaving California as well. Probably everything's going to be set up in Texas. This is going to be a heyday for Texas, honestly, because a lot of people are leaving California. They're going to other states in the South. They're saying, hey, you know what, come here. We don't have as much coronavirus. We don't even have as much taxes either. And we definitely don't have as many regulations. So California is going to end up being a wasteland. And then the Republicans and all the conservatives and libertarians, and all that, they'll probably go back into California and rebuild it, make it better, and put someone in office that is worthy of such a large state. There's so many people in California that are unrepresented, especially from the people in Northern California. Remember when they were trying to create their own state of Northern California? That went nowhere. Unfortunately, that would have been a good type of solution to do that. Of course, you would need the majority of the states to actually agree to stuff like that. You would have to change the Constitution and everything. It would be huge. It would be almost impossible, but almost as impossible as a state seceding from the Union, which Texas tried to do not too long ago either. I believe when Obama was in office. I can't remember, but they tried that. At least there was talks about it. So on this coronavirus, and I know that we're just kind of beating a dead horse here over and over and over with this COVID-19. I try to talk about different things as much as possible, but it's simply just dominating everything. It's also the main point, and it's a main underlying thing that is driving a lot of these policy changes that we are seeing in this country and our individual states that we live in. Everything has a backwash. Well, a backsplash of this coronavirus. And they're using it to do things that they would not normally been able to do. I mean, that's that whole dialectic, this whole paradigm that we've been living under with problem, reaction, solution. It's always a new problem and a new reaction, new solution to that. So we continue to take little steps forward towards this deep state, this communist state that we're going towards, this draconian 1984, however you want to refer it. At this point, it's not good. It's not good for the Republic. It's not good for the Constitution. It's not good for our individual rights. But we keep taking these small steps forward towards that. There have been a lot of doctors and a lot of scientists that have been stepping forward and say, you know what, this is bad. Of course, we know they have been being banned. We know they're being silenced. One in question is Dr. Sukarik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Dr. Sukarik Bhakti. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. So he has been around for a long time. And he is the head of the medical microbiology and hygiene in Germany. He's actually written a lot of studies based on this coronavirus, a lot of op-eds and so forth. So this is from the statements here recently. The views of Dr. Bhakti have been widely discussed in this context. He's one of the senior most scientists in this field, and his work has been widely cited. He has been the head of Institute of Medical Microbiology and Hygiene in Germany. Recently, he sent an open letter to German Chancellor Angela Merkel calling for an urgent re-examination of the response to COVID-19. He said it was difficult to find scientific rationales for the sweeping measures that have been taken more in panic than on the basis of studies which firmly establish very high risk. It goes further by saying the risks have been inflated by mistakes, assuming the presence of coronavirus or COVID-19 in a dead person to be necessarily the cause of death. We all know that. We have looked at the CDC's recommendations on how the doctors or the hospital should be coding these people, how they should be. We're going to be looking at that, but I'll make a quick note here that It's not that much. They don't even have to do a test on these people. All you have to do is literally have a cough. If you have a cough, then you have coronavirus. This is no joke. It's actually part of the CDC that if you have one of the or more of the symptoms, cough, labored breathing, difficulty breathing, stuff like that, fever, then you have COVID-19. That's what the CDC is telling you, and that's what they're also saying, that you can count these if they are confirmed cases or just presumed cases. Most of them are presumed. And if the people are dying in the hospital right now, they're just presumed to have COVID-19. That's why we have such huge numbers right now, when really, honestly, it's probably more like 25 to 30% of that are actually a direct result of COVID-19. Earlier, he had stated that some of the anti-COVID measures are grotesque, absurd, and very dangerous. The life expectancy of millions is being shortened. The horrifying impact on the world economy has threatened the existence of countless people. And this is just because of the reaction, not because of the pandemic. Just the reaction is going to cause 10 to 100 times more damage than the pandemic would ever cause. Like I said, they haven't even been able to extrapolate this virus. They haven't been able to purify this virus as far as getting the particles, the one particle of virus down. They have not been able to do that. They haven't even been able to isolate the RNA of this virus. So how can they properly test for this thing? That's really the question, because nothing has really changed. The tests that they are doing right now, there's false positives up the wazoo. I mean, even a 1% false positive could, with a big enough population like New York, could throw it off by hundreds of thousands of false positives. But we all know that it's higher than that. These tests probably only have about a 70-80% rate of accuracy. It says the consequences of medical care are profound. Already services to patients in need are reduced, operations canceled, practices empty, hospital personnel dwindling. Dr. David Katz, founder of and director of the Yale University Prevention Research Center, has said March 20th, 2020, the New York Times is, I am deeply concerned that the social, economic, public health consequences of this near total meltdown in normal life, schools and businesses closed, gathering bans, will be long-lasting and calamitous, possibly graver than direct toll of the virus itself. Of course it is. We're going to go into a Great Depression because of this, regardless. It's happening. If you think that it's going to be like V-like recovery, I understand. I mean, I'm sorry. It's simply not going to be that. I wish it was too. But this is not something that's anti-Trump or anything like that. It's just simply not going to happen. He's not going to be able to pull it off, no matter how much money he throws at it, no matter how much the Democrats want to throw at it. Trump is trying to preserve our rights to make a better life for ourselves and actually pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, excuse me. But there's only so much we can do because there's so much damage that has been done to this economy. We simply will not be able to do it anymore. Small businesses are being eviscerated, and that is the lifeblood of any strong economy, is the middle class, the small business. It's not the corporations. It's not the people on welfare. It's the small businesses that actually keep everything going. Because think about it. Who are the ones that are actually buying most of the products? The people that are actually in the middle class. It's not the people that are in, that are in poverty and stuff like that, or people that are on unemployment. They're not going out there buying all these things, at least on a regular basis, at least when they're not getting stimulus checks, right? So that is what's happening. Now, it's been happening for a long time, but it's just being accelerated right now. We are seeing it more and more because of how everything's being accelerated. This, I would highly recommend looking into this Dr. Bhakti, because he has a lot of interesting ideas. This was interesting, too. I'll put a link in the description below. This was from harvard.org. It's Hypothesis Review of Literature, Coronavirus Pandemic 2019 Environment Omitted. I'm not going to read this entire thing, but what he is trying to say is that this virus, and it's another type of explanation of why we are being lied to, because the actual environment of these epicenters has been pretty much the same. And when the measles outbreaks that happened in New York, it happened the same way in pretty much the same fashion and the same speed. And it's not just because it's a similar virus, because it's not. They're both transmitted, differently in different ways. Every virus is a little bit different. But what he's trying to say in this is that what a lot of people just are not seeing, some people are actually bringing forward, is the pollution factor that are in these areas. New York is one of the biggest polluters, in the country, just simply because they're just overly crowded. It's such an urban environment. There's so many cars and there's so much industry going on. There's a lot of pollution. Here recently in Nepal, you weren't able to actually see in Mount Everest. Now you can. But that's why we're actually seeing some of the downdrops, because the pollution has been clearing up. People are not having as much of the congestion issues, lower respiratory issues that they were having before. But that all goes hand in hand, because people end up going to the doctor or whatever because they already have a pollution-related respiratory issue, and they're being labeled as COVID-19. So one is feeding the other. But we're only focusing on one particular subset of that, which would be COVID-19. And we're saying we're attributing everything to this pandemic, this virus, when, number one, like I said, we can't even isolate it. We don't even know what it is. We still don't know really what it is. We haven't been able to really isolate it or properly test for it. And we are discrediting, not so much discrediting, or just dismissing other types of environmental factors that are going into play. People who have comorbidities, people are just simply more unhealthy now in 2020. There's more pollution now. Now, yes, it's more green because we have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and we could have a discussion or debate on that, whether that's a good thing or not, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the pollution factor that's going on. And this is something that we have been taking a lot of big strides in trying to fix, especially with the nuclear energy and the fission that I was talking about yesterday. That's going to be something huge coming up over the next decade or so. We're going to see these things take shape as far as energy goes. But a lot of the people that simply already have these problems, all these respiratory issues, they've been living in these populated and polluted areas for so long that just simply... simply just because the air clears up, it's not going to prevent people from having these problems, because they're already there. They've been there for a long time. And we are attributing a lot of this stuff to the pandemic, this coronavirus, this COVID-19, when in reality it's really not. He goes into a lot of different stuff here, the pollution, a lot of different figures as far as different epicenters. We want China, New York City, New York, New Orleans, New Jersey State, Connecticut, Spain, Italy, Massachusetts. So we have all of these different epicenters, and it kind of adjusts that to, and it kind of correlates that to the pollution, how much pollution it actually has. Just here in Wuhan, China, estimated coal is 80% of energy resources. New York City, air and earth pollution, fracking fuel, downwind from Connecticut and New York. A lot of these people are downwind from a lot of these things. Not only that, but also 5G. Now, he does talk about 5G as well, but he also discredits it. He says it has nothing to do with 5G, at least not yet. This has nothing to do with it. Now, could it have something to do with some issues later on? Absolutely, it could. This was another kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a study or not, but it was called Coronavirus Panic, Flaws of Coronavirus Pandemic Theory. This is from David Crow. This was something else that was referenced in his work, this Bhakti's work as well. And that's how I found it. I'm going to put a link of this in the description as well. But what I thought was kind of interesting here was this virus extensus number 3. Scientists are detecting novel RNA in multiple patients with influenza or pneumonia-like conditions and are assuming the detection of RNA, which is believed to be wrapped in proteins, to form an RNA virus, because that's how the virus replicates itself, through RNA. That's why they say some viruses they're not alive. They're just RNA trying to replicate itself, or DNA. Could it be DNA or RNA trying to replicate itself? As coronaviruses are believed to be as equivalent to isolation of the virus, it is not. And one of the groups of scientists was honest enough to admit this. Quote unquote, they said, "We did not perform tests for detecting infectious virus in blood. But despite this admission earlier in the paper, they repeatedly refer to the 41 cases out of 59 similar cases, that tested positive for this RNA as 41 patients confirmed to be infected with 2019 novel coronavirus. Another paper quietly admitted that our study does not fulfill Koch's postulates. Now, what are Koch's postulates? They are first stated as a great German bacteriologist, Robert Koch, in the late 1800s, are simple logic, and can be stated as follows. Number one, purify the pathogen from many cases with a particular illness, which means you purify it by getting the actual particle of the virus, kind of separating the virus, which they have admitted they cannot do. They have not been able to do that yet. You expose susceptible animals, obviously not humans, to the pathogen. 3, you verify that the same illness is produced. And 4, some add that you should also re-purify the pathogen just to be sure that it really is creating the illness. That is how you do that. That's how you isolate the virus. The whole term isolating the virus is just nonsense right now in virology. It doesn't mean anything. Famous virologist Thomas Rivers stated in 1936 speech, it is obvious that Koch's postulates have not been satisfied in viral diseases. That was a long time ago, but the problem continues, and Rivers' guidance was considered important enough to be cited in papers claiming falsely that Koch's postulates have been met during the SARS era. They were not. None of the papers referenced in this article have been attempted to purify the virus, and the word isolation, like I said, has been so debased by virologists, it means nothing. This is the COVID-19 guidelines. This was from, I believe, from the CDC. And this is what they're really talking about, code-only confirmed cases. So here, where they said code-only confirmed cases of the 2019 COVID-19 as documented by the provider, documentation of a positive test result or a presumptive positive test result. So they say, it can be positive or it could be presumptive. You can just assume it's going to be positive, and it's positive. We also see here that there are a lot of different things that they go by. Signs and symptoms without definite diagnosis of COVID-19. This is what they can do. This is what they can look at to say that you have COVID-19. RO5, cough. RO6.02, which are just codes for different symptoms. Shortness of breath. Fever unspecified. Could it be any one of those things? If you just walk into a doctor's and you have a cough, well, guess what? You have COVID-19 now. That is not an overstatement. That is just the truth. That is what's going on. That's why everything is being overstated. Because this virus, some say, yeah, it's real, and I'm inclined to believe that it is real, but there's a wealth of information out there that is saying that it might not be. This might just be something else. It might not be a coronavirus at all. But I'm not really saying that, but I'm just saying that people are saying that. And there are some studies that go along with that or give it some sort of credibility, at least for the fact that we haven't isolated this virus. We haven't really properly studied it. Therefore, we can't properly test for it. Let me see. I'm going to get to that in a second. But as far as this coronavirus goes, the main point is this, is that we are being told a river of lies. And I'm not going to say really lies. I'm going to say half-truths. We are being talked to by the Wizard of Oz, who is behind the curtain. And the wizard is giving us a load of BS, a lot of half-truths, and we need to go ahead. And it seems like every time someone tries to pull back that curtain, they get banned and they get deleted or they get canceled off of social media, and their online existence is just eviscerated. That's the world we're living in right now. That's where this whole communism comes into play, because you have to control the information that goes out to the people, because it has to be filtered in a way to properly, I guess, form the opinions of the population, to form the populace. We can't have the population going over willy-nilly and just getting all their information on their own and forming their own opinions, because then the whole agenda would just fall apart. We can't have a free society. We can't have a free media. We can't have people saying just whatever they want to say, because that's just going to make everything a lot more difficult for globalization, New World Order, and all this other types of stuff to come into fruition. Finally, we have a story from Joe Scarborough and Mika, the host there on MSNBC. They used to be good friends with Trump. I don't know if you were aware of this or not, but back before, when he was running in 2015, at least talking about running and actually running in 2015, announcing his candidacy, he was friends with Joe Scarborough and Mika Jabrin. I don't even know how to pronounce her last name, Jabrinsky, or sorry if I'm, Brzezinski, Mika Brzezinski, excuse me. But they were they used to be friends with Trump. They used to actually have him on his show multiple times, talking to him. And obviously there was some issues when he was talking about banning all Muslims and stuff like that, which turned out to, be a good thing, because the Obama administration was already planning to do that anyway, and Trump just kind of put it into place. But these were only places that were actually harboring terrorists. We had to stop all of the influx from those areas. I don't say why that's racist or anything like that. That's just trying to protect your country. So there was a tweet that just recently went out from Trump. This is nothing new. He has been kind of talking about crazy psycho Joe Scarborough, who used to be a Republican representative from Florida. I remember him. I talked to him plenty of times. But there was a conspiracy back in 2002 or 2003, I think. 2001, excuse me. I think it was 2001. There was a conspiracy that started that Joe had killed one of his interns. Well, there was a lot of good information that came out of that says, she had a, heart condition that was undiagnosed. And this was something that wasn't, that they put out in the media, but a lot of people just kind of ran with the story. But they ran with the story because there was a lot of just kind of weird stuff that kind of went along to it. Joe Scarborough was on the Imus show back in 2003 where he kind of admitted to it. Now, you can't find that anywhere, but I remember that. There was also that 6 months after this happened, he kind of just strangely just kind of dropped out of everything. He was also having an affair on his wife as well at the same time. And, kind of when you have all these different extenuating circumstances happening, of course, people are going to make their own conclusions, say, hey, there's something kind of rotten here going on. This is a little bit, this is kind of a coincidence, all this stuff happening at the same time. One of the most damning things, obviously, was the person, the doctor had done the autopsy on the girl. I guess you can call her a girl, a young woman, saying that he had done a brain section to actually determine that that's why she had died, that she had actually hit her head, and that's she had some sort of internal bleeding or something like that. That's what's caused her death. But if you remember, not too long ago, about 8 years ago, there was a man charged for more than 100 body parts found in a storage container. That was Michael Birkeland. Michael Birkeland happened to be the autopsy doctor that had done the autopsy on that intern. So this was in the news back in 2012. Here's something from CBS. Michael Birkeland, former medical examiner, arrested for storing human body parts in Florida storage unit. I don't know why he was doing that, but they were all whole body parts, like heads and torsos and stuff like that. I mean, I guess he was just chopping people up and just saving them. I don't know. Very sick. And when this story came out, then that kind of revived the whole thing, because he had given his testimony that, that's how she died. But apparently he was just kind of hacking up people and putting them in storage containers. I don't know what he was doing with them. I don't want to make assumptions on that, because it kind of goes down a pretty dark road on what he was doing with these bodies. I mean, but if the person's sick enough to do something like that, I guess he's sick enough to lie about something. I guess that's why this whole cold case thing is starting to be reopened again, not so much from a legal standpoint of view, but also in the court of opinion, where Trump is talking about this. Now, he did put a post out today. Let me actually see if I can actually pull that up here. Okay, so this was the tweet that I actually put out. Roger Stone, originally it was about Roger Stone's continuation of another tweet, has been treated very unfairly. How about that jury foreman Does anybody think that that was fair, disgraceful? Stay tuned. Then he goes on at Fox News, and guys like low-rating Psycho Joe Scarborough are allowed to walk the streets. Open cold case. That's what he's referring to as this cold case. And he's referring to, obviously, the death of that young intern back in 2001, where there was some extraneous circumstances going on. Obviously, Joe Scarborough was never arrested for anything. He wasn't actually even charged or anything like that. Just he's still being tried in the court of public opinion, at least in some small circles and corners of the conspiracy-laden internet. There's some unresolved questions there. Absolutely. Do I think he murdered someone? Probably not. And do I think that Trump should be talking about that? Probably not. I don't think he should be bringing that up. I think he's just going to make it worse. He's making it worse on himself. Neil Cavuto actually, it's kind of long. I'm already at 45 minutes, but Neil Cavuto was actually, he's one of the prominent figures there on Fox News. He was recently talking about the hydroxychloroquine. And he's basically saying, well, hey, if you got underlying issues and stuff like this will kill you. And Dr. Drew was actually online doing an interview as well, saying that this was chloroquine, not hydroxychloroquine. Chloroquine will cause fatal arrhythmias in some people who have underlying heart conditions, but hydroxychloroquine usually does not do that. So Neil Cavuto, I'll play two videos here. One where he's saying it's going to kill you, and then one where a doctor kind of shuts him up.
Among a population of veterans in a hospital receiving this treatment, those with vulnerable conditions, respiratory conditions, heart ailments, they died. There are also a number of other studies out, including the Journal of the American Medical Association, which examined some 1,438 individuals in the New York area across 25 hospitals from the middle of March to the end of March. The study was a real chance to look at the benefits that the president insisted were hydroxychloroquine. They concluded that among residents hospitalized in metropolitan New York with COVID-19, the treatment or both compared with neither treatment, no statistical differences. A second study done by Jacek Jeleris and colleagues at the New York Presbyterian Hospital, Columbia University Irving Medical Center in northern Manhattan from March 7th to April 8th also showed there were no visible differences, that the risk of intubation or death was not significantly higher or lower among patients who received hydroxychloroquine versus those who did not. The VA study to which the president alluded wasn't a loaded political one. It was a test on patients there, and those who took it in a vulnerable population, including those with respiratory or other conditions, they died. I want to stress again, they died. If you are in a that might have any of these other issues, because there are many right now who might and are hearing the president say that it's a good thing to do. Are you saying that that group, the one thing you could lose is your life? You got to be very careful, or not?
It's something that you can consider. Again, you have to have the discussion with your doctor to decide if it's best for you. It's not going to be good for everyone, but it may be beneficial and potentially life-saving for others. So I think it's good to have this medication in our toolbox along with remdesivir while we wait for vaccines to become approved and for other therapeutics to get on the market.
excuse me. Apparently, I was not even able to be heard there, so I apologize about that. So Neil Cavuto, obviously, I don't know what's really going on with him. If you're still with me, I appreciate that. But I don't really know what was going on with him in that segment. Obviously, he did not like what the doctor was saying. And, we obviously live in a world where, in a society right now, where a lot of people just have to, they rely on the social media and the media in general to tell them how to think and how to behave and what's logical and what's not. We should not be doing this. But unfortunately, for some people, and maybe that's what he was doing. Maybe he was just trying to cover all of his bases. But anytime that you're dealing with any kind of an unnatural substance, even like hydroxychloroquine, and even natural substance like natural herbs and so forth, you need to either consult with a doctor or a certified herbologist or someone that deals in that type of thing to go over your medical history to make sure that you're not. It's not going to be interfering with any type of medications that you're already taking or underlying conditions that you may or may not already be aware of. So these are things that are very, should be common sense for a lot of people, and they are. But, now we have to cover our bases and to make sure that, hey, don't go out there and just start doing this. Don't start, don't stop a chainsaw with your crotch because that could hurt you. That's the kind of, society we live in right now where those things have to be harped upon. Unfortunately, I think that's sad. I'm going to leave it here. There's also a kind of an interesting video here of a plane landing on highway. That's just recently happened. I'll go ahead and play that for you. So apparently what happened was that the plane took off. Shortly after takeoff, they were having some major malfunction in engines, and they had to land. Fortunately, that was a good pilot because they were able to land in between two cars, if you saw that. So that was kind of interesting. I'm going to leave it there. So I hope everybody is able to stay safe out there. Make sure that you have you're able to filter out your information as much as possible. Look past a lot of the social media that's out there and the mass media out there that's trying to basically sway you in one direction or the other. Make up your own minds on what's going on. Do your own research. Don't rely on any kind of media, whether it's alternative or mainstream media, to make up your mind for you. Do your own research. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.